Hello and welcome back to Crossroads of Cognizance. Here where we talk about all things woo-woo on both sides of this good old country. Good old country.
That's so rustic.
I know. I don't know. I'm channeling clearly some.
You waxed all Woody Guthrie on me.
I think I need to smudge.
Oh, I got you, man.
Here, if this is your first time joining us, we talk about some common themes that come up in our communities. Sometimes there are common things that happen on the East Coast and the West, everything in between. And then sometimes there's not. Sometimes we're just shooting the shit about our experiences, and you get to see the back door of things and how things work and what we think. And none of that is important, but we hope to inspire you to create your own practices and be grounded in who you are, I think, ultimately. So with that, on part of this team, I am over here on the East Coast. I am Dolly Rose, coming to you from my store, Crystal Cognizance, where we serve our community with healings, readings, and shared space, meditations, all kinds of fun things. But I am not here alone.
My name's Katrina Rasbold. I am half of the ownership of Crossroads Metaphysical Store in Shingle Springs, California. And we specialize in handmade magical items as well as personal services such as spell work, cleansings, meditations, harmonic healing, Reiki, and readings. And we also have a very strong online presence. And so we service everywhere, not just Shingle Springs. And in 2 weeks, all of that will transition to completely online as we retire and close the shop. So that's all very exciting. And that's what is going on at the Crossroads.
Wonderful. Just long enough for me to eat my piece of chocolate.
Oh, nice. So jealous.
So guys, for the show today, we will be talking about the importance of facing fears. And then tonight, Crossroads is having their Santa Muerte veneration.
No, that's tomorrow. I mean,
tomorrow.
Saturday.
It's Saturday.
Tonight's watch.
Is that open to everybody?
No.
So don't just show up, guys.
They normally are, and we usually have them on the calendar. But since this is our last one, we were leaving it to the people that just usually come.
Well, that sounds really intimate. But one thing that stuck out to me was the veneration piece. The offering of respect and all that can go into that, I think, is applicable to more than Santa Muerte. And I thought, I think it would be cool to kind of hear about what takes place and see if our audience can make use of it, right? And then in the comments, guys, see, this is such an informal show. If you have things to share, drop them in the comments. We'll see them. If you're seeing this broadcast on another platform, you may have to actually click on the videos. If you are seeing this on multiple Facebook pages, you're going to have to click on the video so that we can see you. Hi, Heidi. See how that worked? Heidi clicked on the video and we can see her comment now. So
that's because Heidi's a pro. So my impression, I've worked with many different divine figures over the years, many gods and goddesses. I started my time of veneration, I guess you would say, in the Christian church and was raised Baptist. And so that is a very specific veneration of one God, one path's interpretation of the Christian God. And even within the different churches that I attended, and there were many because my parents often got thrown out of churches, you would have to relearn the same scripture and the same basic overall value system as interpreted by that specific church. And even different people within the same church would have different interpretations of scripture and different interpretations of how God should be honored. And so that was my first introduction to working with divine figures. And we were very specific: God, Jesus. Not being Catholic, we didn't have the Blessed Mother, we didn't have saints, we didn't have other divine figures, we did not work with angels. We knew that they existed because they were in the Bible, but we didn't actively engage them. And it was more of an idea that if you were going to work with an angel, it was like the Annunciation, where an angel came to Mary and said, this is what's going down. So it was all a very removed thing. It wasn't especially personal.
Okay.
I had strong reactions to it. I was in churches where they spoke in tongues. I was in churches where there was a lot of what we would call shouting. It's a Southern thing that's born actually from the ring shout of the traditional African traditional religions. And so that's when someone is overcome by the Holy Spirit. So that's what I was raised around. And between Baptist and Pentecostal services, I got quite a lot of experience with that. I left the Christian church when I became uncomfortable with the exclusivity of it and the lack of tolerance to other people. And that wasn't something I could comfortably integrate into my spirituality. And so I swung really hard the other way and tried really hard to be atheist, because my new husband was atheist, and that didn't fit with me. I couldn't really do that. I knew there was something bigger than me in play and at work. And not long after that was when I found Wicca, which of course is just silly with gods and goddesses. And the idea of there being a feminine divine force was really exciting to me. And so I began working exclusively with goddesses at that point, and learning their personalities and what their interests were in terms of how do you come to me and how do you venerate me. And worked with some gods as well. I healed my relationship with God by understanding with the male figure of divine energy, by recognizing that the way that humankind interprets God isn't necessarily who God is. And so I was able to repair the relationship I had with God by circumnavigating the humans that were interpreting that and just spending time with God myself. And so eventually it came to a place where I was working with several gods and goddesses. I never really had a patron god or goddesses. I had different ones that I studied, that I enjoyed. I didn't really feel called to a specific god or goddess until I started working with Santa Muerte about 7 years ago, I guess it was. And that was a really intense and profound relationship that I had. For those that don't know, Santa Muerte is the god, the saint of death, and she is there with us throughout our lives and will be what escorts us into death when the time comes. And so she also is a very ruthless divine figure who doesn't, when she looks at people, she sees, we're like an ant farm. We're just people doing people things. And to her point of view, nothing we ever do is going to be as profound as when she closes her eyes for the last time. And so it's all just very kindergarten to her, anything that we do. So she forgives all. She forgives everything. And that's why she's often associated with some pretty heavy duty crime, because she just doesn't care. She just sees everybody as equal, no matter who they are. Because when we come to her to pass through the veil of death, we are all treated as equal. And so to her, we are equal no matter what things we do to each other, or what we interpret as bad or good. She doesn't really see. She just knows you're going to die, so you're mine anyway. And she's very attentive to the people who give her veneration. You can really feel her presence more so than any god or goddess I ever worked with. She's very uh, engaged and very chatty. And to me, that was quite valuable because I like a personal relationship with my god or goddess. And some of them, and some of the orishas and the different energies that we work with as divine figures are very standoffish. Some of them are very picky about the offerings that you give and the way that you dress and how you're going to venerate them. And I think that's lovely. I really enjoy ritual and I enjoy that they're picky like that. But sometimes you just want the bitch you can get down with. And that's just her. You know, when you give her offerings, she wants an offering that represents what you enjoy in life. What do you love? How do you party? She wants pot, she wants alcohol, she wants chocolate, she wants any, you know, flowers, anything that makes you feel alive is
Mm.
the offering that you give to her. Now, for instance, I would not give her alcohol because I don't drink, so that's not dear to me.
Right.
She wants me to give something that is important to me and that makes me feel alive. And so her request always is, if you're going to come to me before death, you better come to me as the embodiment of life. And so a lot of her gatherings, I mean, we do a mass when we honor her. So we are saying prayers to her that all together in, you know, the whole room is saying the prayers. It's a very lovely thing. Then we go up and do individual interactions with her, lighting a candle, giving an offering, just spending a couple minutes with her, and then you sit down and the next person goes. And that's lovely. But a lot of her interactions are parties. She really likes to hear music and dancing and um, laughter. And it's just a lovely thing.
So, when it comes to veneration, the things that are coming up here are just this intense love and connection with what you're venerating. I think there's offering in that. And then there is the sacrifice of some kind. The offering, like the tangible offering, should be something that is a genuine sacrifice for you.
Mm-hmm.
And this, it seems like that translates pretty much across the board when you're venerating anything. Like I tend to hear the word veneration when it comes to ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm going to venerate my ancestors, and so these are some things that people can, you know, likely take away and go through their own processes with beyond Santa Muerte. But
Mm-hmm.
um the parties thing is interesting to me. So other things that come up, I mean, I know that you guys follow cusp. Is this part of the cusp tradition? Is this a witchy holiday for you all? What is that like?
It's actually not. Well, today is because it's the autumnal equinox. And so this is the second harvest, which is a really important time for us. But Santa Muerte herself is not part of that. She's actually Catholic. And so not a witchcraft thing at all.
Okay.
Um, she's, I think very few people, I mean, there are witches certainly that follow her, but that's not her majority hold. And there's just so much that springs up as you're talking about this that, you know, I think is super important. And one is that word that you use, which is sacrifice. When we think about sacrifice, we often cringe and we think of human sacrifice, or we think of an animal sacrifice, a living sacrifice.
Mm.
And we don't contextualize that idea of sacrifice. And sacrifice is not always of a living creature.
Right.
But it can be. Now, in my practices, it has not been. I used to have a problem with it. I don't now, but I don't want to be in attendance to it.
Right.
The people that I know who do living sacrifice treat the animals very well. And so they are in a much better position than, say, the chicken that you're going to get under plastic at your grocery store. And so they're raised really, really well and then have a very confusing 30 seconds or so.
Yeah.
And so that's, you know, and also it's not combined to pagan practice or to veneration. You know, when we look at the idea of sacrifice, that happened all through the Bible.
Right.
and was for a very long time part of the Christian practice where, gosh, I want to say it was Isaac and Jacob, um, where he was asked to sacrifice his own son as an act of faith, and God stopped him at the last minute.
Right.
And he was, going to get down with that. That was going to happen, and he was stopped. When Mary and Joseph were going to the temple, and they brought their doves. I mean, those weren't going to be released at daybreak in a pretty ceremony. And the reason for sacrifice was to offer something dear to you, something that had meaning. And so I see all of these people, offering tobacco to deities when they don't smoke.
Mm.
The idea of a sacrifice is to be giving something up or giving something to the deity that would have an impact. Now, for me, that would be chocolate. I love chocolate. So offering chocolate is, I could have eaten that, and now I'm not going to. And so it's really about what is dear to you that you are giving, so that you have a sense of releasing something, not just a thing that's meaningless to you. So the nature of sacrifice is weird and nuanced, and we have to really think about that. And people think, well, my God is all powerful. Why do I need to give my God something to get something in return? That's really about not being that kid. I mean, it's not being that person who's just on the skirt tail, pulling. Mommy, can I have this? Mommy, can I have this? Daddy, can I have this? Daddy, can I have this? I mean, that's not who we should be in the world. It's about exchange. It's about saying, I need this, and therefore I'm giving this to make room for something to come to me. But so sacrifice is a huge idea, and definitely when you're working with different gods and goddesses, and I know that you've looked at this, Dahlia, and I know that with ancestors, it's also the case. Look at what they would appreciate.
Absolutely.
And see how that marries up to what you appreciate, and find something. It's a way of communing with them. Now, if I'm honoring my grandmother, I'm going to give my grandmother her favorite tea, whether I liked it or not. I'm going to connect with her on that level. So it's really got to do with what your ambition is for the interaction. So I know that do you do ancestor work, Dahlia?
On occasion. And I love what you said about it being a conversation, because there's an aspect of gratitude in there too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you are coming to deities and other beings, as always, from this place of payment, there's still some distance in there, and it makes me think of like when you want to commune with your family, you draw closer with your family, you can sit down and have a dinner, and put out placemats for, and this is the same thing for ancestors, and like some cultures will do that around the holidays. There's a placemat for grandma and great
Mm-hmm.
uncle Joe and all of that, and their foods will be placed out. Dia de Muertos food is offered at the grave sites,
Mm-hmm.
along with many other kinds of offerings. And I've facilitated some of that in terms of ancestor work. And the most interesting thing to me is how the food will lose its essence, but it won't rot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Very interesting common phenomenon. But anyway, yes, it's all about communing with the ancestors, and so you may even find yourself. One of the practices that I've seen is where you put out, their drink, your drink, and you sit with them, and you intake, and
Mm-hmm.
you go into all of it. And so, to say veneration sounds very like um, uh, very holy, and it is, but then there is also this like, hey, we're in this together, camaraderie, come and sit with me, and let's chop it up kind of scenario going on.
Well, even if you're sitting with your family, number one, if you're an adult sitting with your family, you probably should have brought something to that meal. That is your contribution to say, hey, I brought the wine, or I brought the, I don't know, freaking jello carrot salad or whatever you
Yeah,
brought,
you
so that
ask
you
for
are participating. This means something to me. I enjoy this, so I'm bringing it to share with you. But at the same time, you probably have a little bit of veneration, hopefully, or a sense of respect for your parents or your grandparents who were there. So even though you're coming to spend time and to be jovial and to share that experience, you are also showing respect for your elders or for your betters, basically, the people who are there who have walked the road further than you have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so this leads us to another interesting topic, I think. I mean, I think it connects is facing fears,
Yeah.
right? So we're not completely skirting away from what it means to venerate, but I think that people misconstrue, like you were saying in the beginning, and this is a place to face that fear. Like, what is it that you're afraid of, so much so that you wouldn't attempt to connect with something that can protect you, something that can take your make your life easier, something that actually genuinely cares about you, probably more than any human actually ever has. You know, there is. I think it's important for us to kind of know where our line is. And even in the space of veneration, like Katrina was saying, like if animals are your line, then that's it. It's not, okay, well, I fear this thing, so it must be intensely dark. And if, or if you're afraid of the perception, but you're okay with something, I mean, these are all things to be analyzed. And I feel like there are moments of possible fear as one moves through a veneration or makes assumptions about venerations.
Mm. One of the things Colleen is afraid of is screwing up a veneration. And you cannot, especially with Santa Muerte. I just want to point that out. You didn't do anything wrong, Colleen, at all. Anytime you give Santa Muerte alcohol, she's going to grin. She's going to be happy with that. But it has a deeper significance if it is something that is dear to you. It's not that she's just going to, take some bony hand and swipe the table and say, this is bullshit. No, I've always said with any of the gods and even the Christian God, they don't care how you come to them. They care that you come to them. They care that you take the time and the effort to spend quality time with them. Now, I know Dahlia's in a similar situation, but I mean, I jabber to my divine figures all the time. Just, I should probably wear a Bluetooth headset so that people think I'm on the phone when I'm just talking and talking and talking out loud to my divine figures.
I've
And
said that
it's,
too.
yeah, especially when I'm driving, I'm just like nanner, 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 nanner. I mean, that's my holy time to say, okay, what are you doing here? Because I'm not getting it. I'm going to need a bigger sign than what you're sending me because apparently I'm dumb. So can you just talk to me like I'm dumb and just give me a big billboard or something that tells me what to do? And, just like it's a partner or somebody who's, giving you advice. And yeah, so definitely don't feel bad anytime you approach a divine figure. That what bothers me a lot about Santa Muerte specifically, and this happens a lot in the store, and we're going to get to the fear thing in a minute, but I have
No,
people
this is.
coming up who says, "Oh, I hear she's really powerful and gets stuff done, so I want to use her."
Hmm.
Did she call you? Did she say, I would like to work with you? Did you uh, read anything about her other than she's just a powerful figure?
Mm.
Show some respect. Don't just go there for what she can do for you. Be involved with the process or just back off. Go pray to your Christian God or go, light a candle for Caradwin or something. But don't come to a divine figure just for what they can give you. That's a horrible way to engage your deity. Don't do that.
Well, I think there's an element of fear in that too. I mean, it reads to me like somebody was like, well, I'm afraid to get too close, but I know it's effective. So hand it over in a candle and.
Just give me what I want and leave me alone.
Right.
And they do that with demons too. Have you noticed that?
I know.
People,
I've never had that
oh my
conversation.
God. There's this dude that comes in at night, and I don't even care if he ever hears this and knows I'm talking about him. He knows who he is. And he asks me these, I mean, I don't mind that he asks questions. That's absolutely 100% legit what I'm here for. But he asked me the same thing like 15 different ways, trying to get a different question. Like, this guy just really screwed me over, and I just really want to send demons after him. I'm like, don't do that, man. You're not set up for that. No, man, I want to send demons because, they'll get the job done. No, you know what a demon's going to do? It's going to convince you it's getting the job done. Then it's going to attach onto you and screw up your life. Don't do that. And but what if I'm really careful when no, man, come on, just not with the demons, bro. Okay. And he's just like hammering on the demons.
But this
And
go.
he's a newbie. This isn't an experienced practitioner. And I said, you know what's going to happen? You're going to get in here jacking around with these demons because you think they're going to do what you want them to do. They're going to convince you they're doing what you want to do. And then you're going to be on my doorstep begging me to take those things out of you. And
But this is
so
this
that should be fear. You should have fear for that.
you should. This is a place where you should have fear.
God.
I think that's pretty common with most of the like, you should not be, like you said, doesn't matter what kind of deity is or what kind of energy you're working with. If you're picking up that statue, that candle, like it's a wrench that is going to make your life just a little bit tighter, you're going to get slapped in the face. And if it's not by the energies that you're trying to invoke, it might be your ego that actually causes you damage,
well, and that's what demons eat for breakfast, man. They want that. They want that ego response. Mm-hmm. They want that person who says, I'm the one that can handle this.
Yeah. And it's going to push you on your ass.
It will eat you. Yes, it will.
So, as far as facing our fears, though, like in the no, it's
sorry,
all together. No, this is what it's like to have a conversation with somebody who has ADD, because I'm following you just fine. It all matches up, right?
Well, this is what all of our conversations look like.
So, employing and becoming aware of fear within all of this, I think it's important to understand, what is a demon, what do I need to be concerned about, etc., especially when it comes to veneration, because I imagine, or at least in my rituals and ceremonies, there is always an element of protection. So what's going on outside of that bubble as we raise the vibration or create an intense energy? Doesn't have to be, a raised vibration. It could be whatever we're doing in love or in sacrifice and respect. There are going to invariably be things that we catch the attention of. And so facing your fear and gaining an understanding of these things, it also allows you to navigate protection. It allows you to navigate your line. It allows you to know where your power is, which is huge when it comes to both deities and demons, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I know when Ishtar entered my field, I was like, no, sorry, too big, too much. I'm good. And I put her on a shelf for a year. And it wasn't until a year later she showed up and she was like, okay, are you done? Like, are you done pouting? Because we have work to do. And I was just like, oh, but, and I had to go into, I had so many conversations with mentors and things. And I was like, this just doesn't, I don't understand. But getting into that place of fear really helped me, like by facing it, helped me understand what my fear was. Well, what am I going to look like talking to Ishtar or channeling Ishtar in front of other people as I'm like, letting her talk through me or whatever? What kind of work, what kind of responsibility, much like Colleen, am I going to do it wrong? Mm-hmm. And there's so much that fear can hinder and cause issues with, that I think it's important to really step up to the plate and at the very least, ask the questions, get to know yourself so that you know who you are in proximity to all these things.
We always have control, but I tell you, when something's calling you, it's calling you for a reason. The demons were not calling him. He was looking for a resolution for an injustice that had been done to him. And he would not look at the idea of how he set himself up for that injustice to happen. His own empowerment wasn't there. Now, my Ishtar was the dragons. I was in a situation where I felt a little bit powerless, and I really wanted, this was many years ago, probably 15 years ago, I really wanted big energy. I wanted an energy that was going to come and give me some protection work and also teach me. And so I put that out there, and here come dragons. I all of a sudden started getting dragon energy everywhere. And I hadn't worked with dragons before. And I was like, nope. Hard no, we are not doing the dragons. I know about you little bastards. I know what you're like, and I'm not doing it. I'm not working. And so, but I wasn't connecting that with the fact that I had asked for help. I just knew that all of a sudden dragons were showing up. And so I'm talking to my gods and goddesses and saying, look, guys, I keep asking you for help. And why am I not seeing any forward progress here? Hello, is this thing on? Tap, tap, tap. And the dragons would come back again. I'm like, look, I told you guys, no, fuck off. And so eventually I connected the two and was like, wait just a second here. And the reason I wasn't working with the dragons is I sensed intuitively, and have since seen that this is absolutely true, that the dragons, when you work with dragon energy, it's like engaging the magical mafia. There's a price for, they'll get the job done. I mean, in spades, they will do the job, but there is a price for everything. And if you are not offering, and this is a place where sacrifice gets a little weird, if you're not offering enough of an energy exchange to the dragons, they will take something.
Interesting.
And I was just so not down for that. I didn't like their terms at all. But finally, I just said, you know what? Fine. And I set up this big dragon altar, at my house with all these dragon statues and such that were coming to me. And I was like, all right, you guys, show me what you got. Be present in my life. I'm honoring you. This is what I'm giving you. I will also, and I made another sacrifice that I would give to them. And you know what? They showed up, they did the job, and then they left. And so I still have dragon imagery in my house and around my shop in places just to say thank you.
Right.
But they did what I needed them to do. They came through with the big power, the big guns. And I've seen other people who did try to lowball the dragons and get in trouble for that. But they were very good to me and they worked out well. But I was afraid. And when you talk about facing fear, boy, is that a huge subject, because a lot of people engage their magic from a place of fear to start with.
Interesting.
Oh, if I light this candle instead of that candle, if I walk backwards in circle, if I, mispronounce, if I say Mabon instead of Mabon or something like that, everything's just going to fall apart. What are we going to do? And just this whole little girl with her pinafore flung over her face, kind of approach to magic is so weak. And I hate to say that. We should come to it with respect, but also with the idea that we are an important part of that process. And so fearful magic is, if you're afraid of it, don't do it. That's my approach. If you're afraid of it, explore why you're afraid.
Right. Before you
look inside yourself and see why. Don't be bold. Don't be brave. Don't move forward despite your fear. Find out why you're afraid.
Right. That only makes sense. So I have to say, I've not had that experience with my dragons. But it is interesting. So I haven't petitioned them for anything. They simply, they're in my field. They will do protection work for me. No, that's not true. As far as the petition, I mean, I've asked them to go into places that I could not, to support healing work. But now you have me thinking, like, what? Did they take something and I didn't realize?
Well, and it's usually something like your favorite necklace or your favorite tarot deck goes away. They look for something that has significance to you.
I mean, I get that, and I lose shit all the time. So now I'm like, what the
Yeah. See,
fuck?
there you go. It's not like they Pied Piper your kids like into a cave or something, but it's something that you specifically, that's personal to you, that
Hmm.
just kind of goes away. And yeah, and I had never petitioned them for anything either, which is why I didn't connect them showing up to me asking my gods and goddesses for assistance. I always thought of them as just thought forms that were there. I didn't think of them as some sort of magical transaction or something like that.
But this is
Eh,
interesting, right? When you ask for help, paying attention to what shows up. And maybe like if you're a person who doesn't commonly ask for help, you need to put up a question, a sticky note somewhere like, hey, on this date, be sure to understand that you did ask for some help.
mm-hmm.
And this is what showed up, because a lot of times what people don't realize is what shows up is there is a correspondence with what's able to get the job done, and what the job is that you asked for. So it's perfect. Colleen asked a very interesting question on how to, I guess, tackle the reason why that she's afraid. That's a Colleen with all the great questions tonight. um so meditation isn't the only method. um there are a lot of things. I mean, we're talking about veneration, and that includes altar work. So why not, bring that into your space, putting up the question to yourself to say, hey, I want to explore fear within myself. You can use meditation, you use guided work. But I'm studying to be an embodiment practitioner, and finding out that sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, when you pay attention to your physical body, where is that fear manifesting in your body, then you can start to get answers. Literally, the same conversations that we're talking about that take place in veneration, or when you're connecting with your spirit guides or loved ones, are the same conversations that you can have with your physical body. So pay attention to where it physically manifests, go there mentally, and start asking questions. How long has this been here? You can ask, where did it originate? But if these are complex for you, you can simply start with, what am I dealing with? Where, what does it feel like? What does it remind me of? And really go deep with it. I'm being very basic because there are awesome embodiment questions, but we don't have the time to spend talking only about that. But meditation is not the only method, and we certainly don't want to overlook it, because I mean, there are things that you'll be afraid of that you can come to terms with once you actually understand what's going on. Like, there was a time in my life where I was afraid of witchcraft. I was like, nope. They told me it's bad. They told me I'd go to hell and all of these things. And I had a genuine fear until I started looking into it, reading the histories, meeting other witches, and then finally I was like, what? This is not a bad thing. I don't understand. Like, there's always people that make choices, but the general, like, you can't make generalities about something you don't understand and just deem it bad because you're afraid of it.
Well, journaling is another great way
Oh yeah.
to figure out why you're afraid or what fears are coming up. And, we mentioned meditation is a big word, and it's one that scares a lot of people off. They just say, well, I can't meditate. And so suddenly all of magic is just flushed down the toilet for them because they feel like I can't meditate. And that's just the foundation of everything. So it's really important that you just not get away from the idea of meditation and think about just holding space with yourself, just sitting with yourself. And like Dahlia was saying, if you're having a physical response to a fear, if it's in your belly, if it's in your shoulder, it's in your heart, it's a headache, whatever your fear is coming through as, definitely sit with that and just see what comes up. Sometimes you're working on, some kind of heart issue, and for some reason you start thinking about a song, and then you start thinking about where you first heard that song, and it was when you were on a motorcycle ride with your first boyfriend.
Mm.
And you start unpacking what that relationship was like. Sometimes it's a matter of, you in your head, you see I don't know, a blue spoon, and you're thinking, God, what has a blue spoon got to do with anything? And you remember that your mom always cooked using a blue spoon when she made her biscuits. So what is this?
Mm.
How does this have to do with your mom? Just follow the rabbit hole of what manifests when you're asking your body what's going on, or when you're asking your fear what's going, hey, where did you come from? Why do I feel afraid about this? Now, if I have to say, why am I afraid of my house burning down? I don't have to look far for that. I know exactly where that trauma came from, and I can work through that trauma. But here's the question. When I was a child, why was I afraid of my house burning down?
Mm.
I never, when I was 8, 10, 5 years old, I was terrified that my house was going to burn down while I was sleeping. And why? I didn't, that was I was also terrified of wolves. And there was not a single wolf in all of Kentucky, where we were. So the question becomes, where do those fears come from? Why are they there? And what purpose are they serving? We honestly, in theory, shouldn't have any fears that are not founded in a reasonable expression. And for me, I mean, for instance, I'm terrified of drowning to the point that it's really difficult for me to get near large bodies of water. And there's no reason for that. I've not had a near drowning experience, but I can't swim and I'm afraid of drowning. Why? Don't know. I haven't been able to connect that to anything. So
I
sometimes we just have those weird.
I also have had the whole drowning thing, and so we're going to get into past lives. So the conversation comes full circle, and just to address this, AJ, it could be both. It could be
Yeah,
both ADHD and TikTok dragons.
or
Because
either.
here we go, here we go down the ADHD rabbit hole. Because we're going to segue onto the possibility of past lives, like um even before. So I guess my near drowning experience, I was sleeping on the beach and the tide came in, and it was kind of a crazy scenario when I was little. But even before that, I was afraid of drowning. The water was not that deep when I had my experience, and it wasn't as if I was going to drown. But for whatever reason, the dreams would come. I was irrationally afraid of it. This is a spiders thing too. I mean, there's so many irrational fears, and I feel like we're connecting these to past lives. What does that have to do with this conversation? Well, also maybe alongside those fears, were you burned at the stake in a past life, and now you have freedom and choice, and you're not in a space or a country that will oppress you in that way, because unfortunately those countries still exist. But now you're being called upon by a deity, by an energy, and you're afraid to pursue it because of a past life wound that's still gaping, because you dragged it forward. I don't know. I think because, even as I say past lives, I also believe that timelines happen like concurrently. So there, you may be the age where something manifested on a different timeline, and now that fear is kind of
Mhm.
bleeding through to you, and you're having this experience. I think that some of these things kind of bleed over. We say past lives, but it's not really past. It's still kind of occurring on an energetic level.
I
So
agree with that. I'm a concurrent timeline, concurrent life person rather than previous life, as in chronologically. I think also we have to look at precognitives in terms of
yes.
fear. And for instance, my recent surgery situation, and you kind of did some hand holding with me on this, where I knew if I had surgery on this day, I was going to die. And situations just kept pushing me toward moving ahead with that idea that I was going to have the surgery on the day that I was afraid of. And I kept telling myself I was being silly. I kept telling myself, this is ridiculous. Don't let that interfere with your health, and you need to do this. And then a situation totally unforeseen genuinely came up where I would have died if I had the surgery on that day. And so
Yep.
it wasn't a matter of just being ridiculous. It was a matter of just not knowing how it was going to manifest yet.
Right.
And so I think that our fears are meant to guide us, but not control us.
Right. They're not meant to stop us. They're not meant to hinder us. It's just the moment of pay attention. And it probably takes that level of energy to get us to pay attention. Right? You get the scare of something. I mean, I just ask anybody that's gotten some sort of chronic condition diagnosis or terminal
Mm.
illness diagnosis. That's something that jars you awake to everything. And it's a shame that it has to
Mm-hmm.
be that way, but on the other hand, we can start looking at what, in the case of, you know fears that can be um, addressed, what is our next step? What can we do with this? And I think um, a common misconception is that you will march forward without the fear. Oftentimes that is not the case, that you will march forward with the fear, and like Katrina was saying, there's an opportunity to understand it and maybe decrease it. And then, once you have full understanding, maybe even get some support like mental health services and things like that. Or your local witch. Katrina has an email.
And, we all know those people that are immobilized by fear.
Yes.
But what if? But what if? Yeah, and you said, make a suggest. Well, you really don't like living here. Had you thought about moving to another part of the country? I did, but what if? But what if? But what if I don't like my neighbors there? What if I get there and I can't find work? What if? What if? To the point that they're unwilling to engage any kind of risk factor.
Mm.
And I will tell you now, having guided literally thousands of people in different types of soul progressions and different types of life coaching, you cannot get anywhere unless you take risks. You absolutely cannot. And often you will be pushed by the universe to a place that you're forced to take a risk. And it leaves your control. And so we do have to find a way to be courageous and to move forward despite there being fears, without it being an emotional breakdown to do so. There is a happy medium there that strikes a nice balance. And if we are not willing to get in there and take risks, I'm telling you, you won't achieve anything, because you're basically saying to the universe, I am not going to make an effort. I'm going to sit here and wait, and you're going to deliver everything to me without me having any type of risk involved. Life does not reward that.
No.
And no, it doesn't.
And even if you're sitting in a place of like, well, I've manifested things without having to take risk, really, really look at that. Was it consistent? Was there really no risk involved? And then, was it short lived? I mean, to me, that's an indicator of like, it's like squeezing the last bit of ketchup out of the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, I got my ketchup, but you don't have any more. Like, it's not something that will continue to support you, because you built up energy using other means without having to make some real risk
Mm-hmm.
risk taking decisions. And I think it's important to pay attention to the not right now piece, right? Like,
Yeah. Yes.
sometimes it's fear is manifesting, and you're what ifing and shoulding the whole situation, and it's just like, what, really, really engage with that, or maybe the timing is off. Maybe the timing's just off in you, and the universe is gifting you things, and it's just not the right time to say yes.
I have a lot of people that come to me saying things like, good things never happen to me.
Mm.
I can never find success no matter what I do. Nothing ever lasts. And after we start picking apart and really looking at their past choices and their past decisions, they mean that nothing has ever come to them spontaneously,
Mm.
rather than I have been unwilling to even open the door a little crack to let good things come to me and to go out and look for them. Sometimes you have to be the one to find the good things.
Mhm.
It's like a job, oh, I can never find a good job. Are you looking for a good job? Or are you waiting for somebody to phone you and say, hey, I have a job, do you want it? You know,
That's a great point.
yeah, you have to be willing to go out, put yourself out there to be at risk. And jobs are another place that people get really weird, and they're saying, I can never get a good job. Okay, well, what have you done to get a job? Well, I can't apply for this job because they're going to drug test me, and I can't apply for this job, you know, and I'm going to test positive for cannabis, or I can't get this job because I can't work nights. I can't get this, you know, there's always a reason why this job is not going to be successful for them, rather than trying it to
Right.
see if maybe it would be a good fit.
What's interesting to me, I love the point that you brought up about spontaneous things that happen. To me, that speaks somewhat, can't be all of it, but to somewhat the issue of receiving. So I know that there was a point in my life where I was like, you know, maybe good things will happen if I do X, Y, and Z, or, you know, and I have to put in effort. And at the point where I started seeing things kind of just show up, it was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to be open to receiving. Instead of feeling like I have to do everything, I'm going to do what is required. I'm going to do what is needed. You know, I'm going to pay attention to these things. I'm actually even going to do what I want to do. And on the other side of that was the possibility for spontaneous good things to appear. And I've actually had this conversation a couple of times where I'm saying to people that I'm talking to, like, hey, you know, I asked for this, and then I put myself out there, and I accepted the possibility that it may not happen. And then I just left it to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whatever else needed to finish that work. I think that when we are in a place of I don't want to have to owe anybody, things never turn out for me. I have to do it myself. It makes it harder for those spontaneous manifestations to happen. I think that's such an important thing to recognize. Are you asking for spontaneity, or are you asking for, you know, the work to be done?
You know, fertility is a lot like that. We
Oh,
hear a lot of people that are trying to conceive, and they end up conceiving at the worst possible time. When something has happened that completely distracts them from their fertility goals, they tend to get pregnant. And I think that sometimes there's too much emphasis put on the things we want to the exclusion of other things around us.
hmm.
Um, and also, one thing I would ask somebody who is wanting those successes to come their way and not seeing it is, are you making room in your life for this success to show up? For
Yeah.
instance, I know you probably get this too. A lot of people who are attempting to manifest a perfect relationship, a great soulmate, bring my twin flame to me relationship, while they're still in a shitty relationship that they're unwilling to give up.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, there's somebody standing in the batter's box, basically, and they're trying to bring another person in. And those types of complications really speak to the idea of sacrifice and the idea of fear. You have to let go of the toxic and uncomfortable positions you're in order to make space for the good stuff to come. You can't, you know, have something wholesome and wonderful come into your cup when it's full of a whole bunch of broken things.
Right. I tend to get that, and I tend to attract clients who are very strong workaholic women. And so they don't have time to develop a
Right.
relationship. So it's less the space of someone's in there, it's their job is in there. And so
Mm,
they're like, oh, I want a person that does this and that. And it's like, but you would never be present
right.
to what they're doing. They'd either have to work with you,
Mm-hmm.
or, and even that's iffy. So, and there's nothing wrong with being a strong workaholic
Mm-hmm.
business person. I mean, it has its downsides, but if that is your goal, you have to kind of be reasonable about, hey, you know, if I invite another human into my life, reasonably, they're probably going to want some of my time. They're not
Right.
just going to, and I mean, even if it's just to have fun for one night, a couple days in a row, um, they're still going to want some of your time. You're going to have to put your computer away. You're not going to be able to answer those emails. You're going to have to
Mm-hmm.
leave your desk. So that tends to be what I see when they want to manifest relationships. They're married to
Oh,
work.
yes. 100%. And, think of it as if you're trying to bring a person into your life, and sometimes it's just a matter of, I wish I had friends. I wish I had friends I could
Mm.
do things with. I wish I had close relationship with my siblings. I wish I had my soulmate. Think of it as getting a pet. If you get something in your life, it has to be nurtured. And so that relationship is going to need to be nurtured. And you can't just say, well, I guess I have to be alone because I'm driven in my work. No, you have to carve out and make time to nurture the relationship. And that really speaks to expectations.
Mm.
That is what really trips people up, is they assign expectations to what they're asking for and what they're afraid of. And those expectations are not always what it looks like. So if you're telling the universe, look, I really want a great car that I can enjoy and that's visually pleasing to me and isn't a mechanical disaster, in your head, if you've got a Lincoln Continental, you're going to miss the 5, Corvettes that come past. You have to really be open in your expectation and look at what's happening. And you have to appreciate the small things. I have people that do money work,
Mm.
but they won't pick up the quarters that they find on the ground because that's
Mm.
not enough. And so they're not even seeing, hey, money is coming your way. Acknowledge it. Look at it.
I remember
They think it's going to be that somebody dies and they get a big payoff or something.
I remember doing money work and for a house. And then by the end of the year, when I looked at the sum total, it was money work for down payment on a house. Wasn't even the whole house. And by the end of the year, sure enough, I looked at it and I was like, no shit. Like there it was. But I was not paying attention to the increments coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a lesson I know well.
Well, and you and I both know the I just want to make rent trap, right?
What a terrible saying.
Yeah. If this shop can be successful, as long as I make rent, I'm happy.
Right.
No, you're really not. you would love some profits for your time too.
You would love to be able to eat. You would love to be
Right.
able to walk around without clothes,
Keep the lights
without
on.
clothes, without
Yeah.
holes in your clothes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being specific. One way that we could start this process of making space is making time for veneration.
Mm-hmm.
That takes real time and commitment. I love when we had because it's been 2 years we haven't really had groups. When we would do Dia de Muertos here, like in real ceremony, I'd take my healing space, convert it into 3-level altar and all of that. It took time, it took effort, it was uncomfortable because the room was hot, and but it didn't matter. People really got to experience the love of their loved ones and get their messages and commune in a way that could only happen on such a unique day because the rest of their lives were busy. It is just as much as you have a relationship with the divine, whatever your deity, belief, or what have you is the same relationship that you would have for inviting something into your life. It needs to be, most things that you invite in your life need to be nurtured. And so figuring out your fears, figuring out your priorities and your values, and then engaging with, it's almost like we're venerating different things already. So
Balance is what really comes to mind as you're saying all of that. And we see people that are very driven in their work, and in our society that's something to be admired. And a lot of people have to be driven in their work because they have to work 3 jobs in order to pay their rent and to have food to eat. And
right.
so a lot of times work does tend to overtake. Balance is very important because we have to sleep. We have to have quiet time. We have to have time with our gods, time with our loved ones. And so finding that balance is just so critical in every part of our lives.
So We are at that time again, guys. You know, if you have your own veneration practices, we'd love to hear about those in the comments. And you know, what were your biggest takeaways from the show? What did you find useful? And as always, if there's something that you'd like to see us talk about, let us know. And we'll come back and we'll chat about it. But you know, whatever your walk is, taking time and respect for these things, like Katrina said, it's all about balance. So with that, and for balance, we're going to get off this show now. We'll catch you next time on Crossroads of Cognizance. Bye, everyone.
Bye.